Great to have you along for the ride. Thanks a lot for stopping by. Glad to have this man back. He's become a friend of mine. We've been friends for a long time now. It's Dan Nitro Clark. You know him from American Gladiators. You know him as a great author. He's also a great host. And you're out there doing TED Talks. Dan, how are you? Good to see you.
Joe, great to connect with you again. And I think it's a momentous time, especially in San Antonio, with Victor coming to the Spurs. So that's fantastic. You know what's only better than that is that the new docuseries that we just finished for Netflix, Muscles and Mayhem, which just dropped yesterday, is now #1 in America. I don't know if it's the red, white, and blue spandex that we all wore. I don't know. Have you seen it, Joe? Did you have a chance to watch it?
I did. I binged the entire show last night. I knew that I was going to have you on today. For those that don't know, Dan was in town in San Antonio. Now we're 170 stations now nationwide, but they all know that I'm based in San Antonio. He was in town, and you were promoting this event where you get out there and you get messy in the mud and you do an obstacle course. What was it called? I forget.
It's called the Gladiator Rock and Run.
There you go.
It's obstacle adventure course. And we went to San Antonio. You and I became friends.
Well, we did.
I showed you how to work out.
Well, you did. And this is why I bring it up, because people don't understand, what a really, really nice guy you are. Your people called us, and I said, I'll have him on if he works out with me tomorrow. And he's, yeah, sure, no problem. I didn't think you were going to show up. He shows up. And we worked out for like 2 or 3 hours, and we just really had a great time. And I'll never forget how motivated you became when I said one thing. I said, I've got triceps for days, and I can do push-ups all day and all night. And Dad, I got to tell you something. I couldn't move my arms for 3 weeks after I worked out with you that day. That's the beating you put on me in the gym. But you still have that drive that you had 30 years ago. 30 years ago, that drive, a tryout on the pavement somewhere, got you that job at American Gladiators, and you're the exact same guy, aren't you?
Yeah, well, I really believe in this country that what's so great about it is that if you have something that you want to do, someone you want to be, that there is opportunity to go out and be that. I was this guy who just got cut from the Los Angeles Rams. I had a few dollars in my pocket because I was a strike football player, and I was trying to support my 2-year-old son. I didn't know what I was going to do. So I moved to Hollywood. There was a shot at this thing. I loved that it was about America, American Gladiators. That sold me right there. So I went out and I gave it my all. I worked hard. I got the show. And it really, by taking that risk, taking that chance 30 years ago, it changed my life, Joe. And it's amazing to me that we're still here today talking about that 30 years ago.
Well, we are, and I was a guy in the audience that could not miss the show, and yes, as a teenager or whatever age I was, we're not that different in age, but I wasn't quite as old as you. I was watching for the women wearing spandex, but also I was watching because you men were in unbelievable shape, and I wanted to look like that one day. And I think it was a time 30 years ago, so different than now, that a beautiful body meant something and that people did strive for that. Do you see that coming back around? Because I really do think that along with the fact that your personality and Ice's personality and Laser and everybody else, that drew us back in too. You guys were great characters. But if you weren't fit like that, it would not have worked, would it?
So even today, Joe, fitness is like the air I breathe. People say, oh, do you have to work out? I said, just like I have to breathe. It's part of my life, movement, exercise. And,
right.
The science backs it up, right? Exercise 20 minutes a day, 3 times a week, decreases your chances of all risks of mortality by like 30%. It's like, how can you not move? But I think what captured America's imagination about gladiators was that it was this competition where it's mono against mono, woman against a woman, where these two athletes who might have been the best in your neighborhood, it might have been the captain of your football team in your city. And I think a lot of times for athletes, Joe, there wasn't another place if you didn't make it in pro to continue to pursue your dream. Well, American Gladiators gave the everyday person who still had that desire, who still had that burning dream inside to compete against the best. It gave them a platform to do it on the American Gladiator TV show. And I think that one-on-one competition is what really drove it. And I also, looking back, Gladiators was really groundbreaking. It was the first TV show that had the men and the women do the exact same events. And I remember there was some talk about getting cheerleaders on in the beginning. And we had a very strong female voice in the room named Julie Resch. And she said, look, you've got your women out there. Look at these women. They're strong. They're muscular.
Yes.
They're beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need cheerleaders. It degrades who they are. So I'm glad she won that, and it remains such a pure competition.
Well, it really was, and pure competition that, as you said, eventually through the seasons became inviting to a guy like me. Not that I could do it now at my age, but back then, you know, if I were in my early mid-20s, and like you said, thought that I was the top athlete on my block, I show up and Dan Nitro Clark will knock my block off, but it's all to be on TV and to get this pseudo fame for a second. Because the show is number one, and again, I binged it last night. I think a lot of people are watching this and they're going to watch it again. Muscles and Mayhem, an unauthorized story of American Gladiators. It's now on Netflix. Does this prove your point that you guys were the featured, reason why people tuned in? I think that the studio didn't get that it was important that the core four were a part of this show.
Yeah, I think it's kind of what's happening here, in Los Angeles with the writer's strike. Right, the writers are clamoring, which I'm a member of the WGA. We're clamoring for a little bit more fair pay for residuals when shows go on, and I think it was the same thing there. We gladiators, we gave our blood, sweat, and tears on the floor of that arena, and us gladiators is what helped build that brand.
Right.
And when it came time, after 3 years of success, after 3 years of busting our tails on the show, broken bruises, broken bumps, bruises, whatever you want to call them, surgeries. They came out with the merchandising line, and it was our faces on everything. And we said, hey, just be fair and give us a piece of what we deserve of the merchandise. We weren't asking for this never be seen before crazy contract. We said, just do what the industry standard is. Be good human beings. And the guy who ran the company just said, no, I'm not going to renegotiate.
And I had no idea. I want to interrupt here because I want to fill people in on who are watching, and they're going to go watch it tonight. We're not going to give away anything that's groundbreaking other than I had no clue. When I saw Dan Nitro Clark as an action figure at the store, and believe me, I saw it, and everybody else saw it. They wanted it, and Ice, and Laser, and the other. I didn't think that you weren't going to get paid. It literally was you. It was your face. It was the outfit that you wore. It was your persona that you built on that show. And Dan, you weren't asking for 50%. Don't tell anybody. But if anybody uses my name, in any merchandising, I get at least 50. You were asking for what? 2 points? 2%?
Whatever industry standard. We couldn't even get to that point with our reps. But again, Joe, I'm not here to complain. And I know you know that. The show isn't a big complaint. The show just gives you a picture and a window into the 90s, and I think it's a raucous, rip-roaring romp back into the 90s, into that time, where it's a lot of fun, where things are easy, where gas was 90 cents a gallon, where you could go through the drive-thru at McDonald's and the McRib just came out. Van Halen ruled the airwaves.
Right.
That's when the American Gladiators on, and this show will transport you back to the time. And I will say I have zero regrets about being on the American Gladiators.
And I know that. I know that about you. I'm not suggesting that it was all filled with drama, but there's behind the scenes stuff. Go ahead. Look at that.
There is actually the little action figure that we're talking about.
And again, I mean, it's you. It's literally your picture, your face, and that little guy is you. So, I mean, I get it. And again, I'm not trying to make a negative out of a positive. I know it's a positive. You and I spend time together. I know that you love what you did and you love being Dan Nitro Clark. I get all that. But I just hate when there's somebody so pig-headed at a studio level where they thought they knew better than what the fans knew, than what you guys and gals that were doing it knew. And that bothers me to my core because I'm sort of in the same business.
Well, yes, what it does, Joe, it's just a sense of not being fair.
Right.
Just treat us fairly, treat us as human beings. We did the work. Their idea was that the brand was so strong. Their idea was that if it was wrestling, back in our day, you wouldn't need Hulk Hogan. You wouldn't need Randy Macho Man Savage, the Iron Sheik, or the Ultimate Warrior. They would just tune in because it was WWE wrestling.
Yes.
And that's what Samuel Goldwyn Company thought. So when we said we want more money, we want to be treated fairly and piece of merchandise, and they said either come back to work or you're fired. So the three top gladiators said, okay, we're done. This isn't fair. We're going to, take our rights as Americans, and we're going to stand up to you. And we're saying no.
Right.
So they fired us all.
Crazy.
And in hindsight, that was the year 4, where the ratings plummeted because little Joey Pags, you were probably 2 at the time, was turning it on, and you were looking, hey, where's Nitro? Where's Ice? And the
Right.
ratings cratered.
Right.
And it was just, it was an unfortunate situation. I did go back to the show.
Yeah.
They asked me to come back, and I said no. The next year, I sat out a whole year, and they kept calling me, begging me to come back, and I said no. If I did that for no reason, then I stood for nothing.
Right.
And then they dangled a different carrot in front of me. They said, come back as Nitro for 1 year. Then we'll let you host the show. Like, you can be Joe Pags, but never quite that handsome with big arms. You can be Joe Pags and come up to the booth and host.
And you
so
did
that
damn
was
good.
I wanted
By
to
the
do.
way, you were really, really good at that.
Oh, and that's something I aspire to do.
Good.
Maybe when I grow up, I can have my own radio show.
Well, one of these days, you can take my job any day. You know how much I think of your talent. It's Dan Nitro Clark. Go to dannitroclark.net. See this expose. It's amazing. Muscles and Mayhem, an unauthorized story of American Gladiators. You guys go everywhere. Sex, steroids, on the road for 6-8 months at a time. Town to town, broken bones, 9 surgeries, 11 surgeries. I mean, in watching this, Dan, one time in my life, I played full contact, no pads football. One time. I thought I broke my neck. I thought I was going to die. You guys were doing this every single day. And in the early days, it was only, 4 or maybe 6 gladiators? So you had to take on everybody who was fresh as could be, and you'd been beaten up and torn apart. And if I remember what I said last night, you guys were making a couple $100 a show, maybe $500 a show. I mean, did you know going in every day, I could end my career today by doing this, these unbelievable feats of athletics?
There was always that idea, Joe, that if you didn't perform, that you were fired. And rightfully so. It's up to you to do your job and do your job the best you can. And I think a company has a right to remove you if you're not doing the job you're hired to do. But that in that same breath, if we got injured, let's say we're shooting 26 episodes in a season.
Right.
If we got injured in episode 3, they didn't pay us for the rest of the season.
That's crazy.
So that was the hard thing. But, again, I was never worried for my job as a gladiator that someone was going to be better.
Yeah, but were you worried for your health, though? You had to be. This is full contact. People, a 200-pound guy swinging on a rope, you add the velocity, you multiply the velocity times his weight, you're getting hit by 1,000 pounds of pressure every single time.
At 24 years old, 25, I felt bulletproof.
I got you.
You know what I mean? I said, look, you can hit me, you can punch me in the face, you can do whatever you want. I'm a strong man. I can take care of myself. So I wasn't worried so much about getting hurt. I knew what I signed up for. That's what I signed up for, to have full contact, to get, hit in the chops and to hit someone back in the chops. So that didn't worry me. In season 3, there was a game where it was like a tug of war thing.
Right.
And I ended up herniating discs in my back. And I was like, damn. So I went to the doctor. This was like maybe episode 3. So I went to the surgeon and they said, look, you herniated your disc. You're out for 8 weeks. And I said, no, you don't understand. If I'm out for 8 weeks, that means I don't have a job.
Wow.
And I said, we need to fix this. So I go back there and they said, hey, if you get the trainer or the doc to sign off, then you can come back to work. So I went back to the doc and I said, you know what I need? I said, I need Vicodin. And they prescribed me Vicodin. I came home, took 4 Vicodin. The trainer at Gladiators put me through the test. Can you touch your toes? Can you do this? And, being on painkillers, I said, yeah, I could do anything. I can fly. And I did the rest of the 23 episodes that year, on pain pills. But that's what you needed to do to survive. And again, I wouldn't change a damn minute of it, Joe. It was a glorious experience, except I wish that the production company would have treated us fairly, because I have this belief, and you're seeing it now with this being #1 on Netflix, Muscles and Mayhem, the popularity of this. I have this belief, Joe, that show was such a great format. It took a game show, which we know the durability and the psychability of game shows, Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy. They've been on for 40 years. It took a sport, football, NFL, MLB, NBA. They've been on for 40 years. It took both of the best things of two worlds and it put them together. If those producers would not have been quite as greedy, that show could still be running today. And I think there's sadness for me, because there are so many athletes out there who didn't get their shot at the 15 minutes of fame, who didn't get that shot to elevate who they were, because the show stopped existing because of that greed. And that's my personal opinion, obviously.
Yeah, Muscles and Mayhem, it's #1 on Netflix. It is the story, the unauthorized story of American Gladiators. It's Dan Nitro Clark. He, of course, was Nitro on the show. One thing, because you said you don't regret anything. Would you still hold out and get fired? You were right. All three of you were right.
Absolutely. Because it turned out the way it was supposed to turn out.
Okay.
If for me, what kind of man am I if I make a stand and I say, this is what I believe?
Right.
And then as soon as they fire me, I crawl back with, my tail between my toes. I'm not that man.
Right.
That's my word. I'm going to stick with it. And then after a year and a half, I said, okay, I reprocessed it. You're bringing more to the table. I can come back. So no, I don't regret leaving. It was the right decision for me.
Let me make it clear to those who are watching and listening, Muscles and Mayhem is overwhelmingly filled with smiles, with positivity, with friendship, with camaraderie. I really loved watching it. And again, I just have to go back to, I faced this in my career over 32 years now, where people just don't understand who are sitting in an office somewhere. They don't get why something's working. And you said something last night that really stuck out with me. This is the last thing I want to ask you, Dan. Thanks for making some time today. You said, had they not done what they did, had they just been fair with us, American Gladiators would still be on today. You really believe that, don't you?
That whole commentary I just had was, I believe it, because it's the best of two worlds. It was a game show that consisted of sports and a game show that consisted of the two separate things that have long-lasting duration, and the brand is still loved today. That's why it's #1 on Netflix. And I think people, when they tune in, they're going to be overjoyed. It's going to bring them right back to that moment where they were maybe playing, Breakthrough and Conquer with their little brother in the backyard, or watching it with their father. It's bringing back so many memories. I have so many people sliding into my messages on Instagram just saying, oh my God, I love that show when I was a kid. Oh my gosh, when you talk about your mom and getting divorced. So, I cried my eyes out. Yeah. My parents are divorced. So it not only hits on the entertainment level, it also, I think, hits on a human level. And as the producer of the show, was so important to me, #1, to be authentic. Did you take steroids? Absolutely. Did you do this? Absolutely.
It's raw. Dan, it's raw. It's there.
And I think, Joe, that, I think people are really searching for authenticity right now, and for me, I said, you know what, I'm going to be 100% truthful. I'm going to tell the truth. You can laugh at me. You can do what you want, but I'm going to walk away from this with my head held high, because, I knew I am, and I'm a friend of Joe Pags.
Well, that's the most important thing, obviously. It's currently #1 on Netflix. It's an amazing documentary. Go check it out. I binged it last night, Muscles and Mayhem. And this is the guy, Dan Nitro Clark. Dan, come back off it. It's been a while.
I'm happy to come back on, my friend. And I'm going to introduce you to Ice and Tower and Laser. And you're going to have a bunch of these red, white, and spandex people on. You're going to love Steve Hennenberry Tower. He's a Wisconsin boy who at 60 years old recently just competed for the senior Mr. America.
That's amazing.
He walks around, Joe, at 300 pounds.
Get out of here.
And he cuts down to 5% body fat at like 265.
I know you call him Tower. Marvel. How tall is he?
6'5".
Wow. 6'5". He's competing at 260?
260, lean and ripped.
Wow.
We went and shot some of it for the docuseries. Unfortunately, it didn't air. We went and shot some of his competition in Pittsburgh for Mr. America. But he's a great guy. You're going to like him. I'm going to make sure to introduce him to you.
Everybody go and check this out, Muscles and Mayhem. It's Dan Nitro Clark. Dan, thanks so much for the great joy you gave us 30 years ago and for the great friendship that we continue to have. And I think this show is going to show back up now because of how popular this is on Netflix, and I'm sure that you'll be very involved in it. Thanks, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you, buddy.
All right, brother. Talk soon. We're back after this. Stay right here.